Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Ladies and gentlemen, SideStrafe here with another episode of Nostalgia Night. And as you can see from the footage, we're looking at MechWarrior 2 31st Century Combat by Activision. And there really wasn't any other developer name. Activision usually had in-house devs at the time. So unless you look at the booklet in the back or the credits, you're really not going to know who made this game. Where are they now? Anybody's guess? I wish them the best, as this was definitely one of my favorite big box classics. And I say big box because obviously at that time PC games came in a large box with a real manual. This one featured a 76-page booklet that had tons of information on your mech, your loadouts, your controls, your how-tos, your troubleshooting, your storyline, tons of fun stuff. And I have to say on this note, I wish more games actually came with a real paper booklet, because there's something just about having it in your hands, flipping through it and having it to look at. Maybe you're going to school or work. I remember at the time riding on my bus to go to school, and I'd be in class, on free time, learning how to become a better mech pilot. And obviously at that time, that was more important to me than learning about mathematics and whatnot. So that was nice to have that booklet there. It's just, I think that you got more for your money, when you're getting actual physical goods in the box versus some stupid PDF or whatever else you're supposed to do. Also, on top of that, in the box, you got a pull-out card, a reference card to look at your controls and your mapping and things like that. A little guide on to tell you what your heads-up display icons mean and things of that nature. And that was pretty much it. The rest of the box obviously just included the jewel case with the CD. In the jewel case is actually a install guide for Windows 95. Now, the reason that might be interesting is because the game was originally meant to run on MS-DOS, and most people didn't run games in Windows too much at that time or prior to this. So on the box itself, we're going to take a look at some of the system requirements, minimum system requirements here. And this is when they all still said IBM CD-ROM, so IBM PC are 100% compatible. Processor, we're looking at a 486DX2 with a 66 megahertz processor. 66 megahertz. So 8 megabytes of RAM, double speed CD-ROM drive with a 300K second transfer rate. Hard disk drive with 45 megabyte of uncompressed space available. A Visa local bus or PCI video card. A 256 color SVGA 640 by 480 display, and of course it says MS-DOS. Now, again, 640 by 480, that's your maximum res. There were no options that you could really change except for, I guess, maybe brightness and contrast, stuff like that. Similar to console gaming. Funny. Supported sound devices, Creative Labs Sound Blaster Pro 16, AWE32, all that type of jazz there. Lots of supported input devices as far as standard 2-button joysticks, CH flight stick, and Pro pedals, Thrustmaster flight weapons, and yada yada as far as controls. So lots of controls there. A lot of people played this game with flight sticks and whatnot. And it does have multiplayer demo requirements, because there was only a demo for multi, I guess, in the CD. 100% Haze compatible modem, 9600 BPS or faster, null modem connection, or IPX NetBIOS network. So that's how complicated you can tell that multiplayer was at that time. There really was no support for it, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Let's kind of look at that in general. You can see that the requirements back then, it wasn't about having this insane monster video card. It was mostly about your processor and your RAM. So things have obviously changed quite a bit since then. Now, later on, they do actually release a titanium edition of this game that does take advantage of such cards like the 3D Effects Voodoo series. And it changes certain things like in terms of particle effects and lighting. Now, the video you're actually watching is of the titanium edition, and because that actually uses the direct 3D technology, whereas the original version, I wouldn't actually be able to record because Fraps needs OpenGL or Direct 3D to actually record. So that is that. Also, you would need the Titanium Edition if you wanted to try to run this on Windows 7 without having too many issues. It seems like that's the better way to go. Now, as far as the game itself, let's try to talk about that a little bit. This featured the Clan Wars. Clan Jade Falcon and Clan Wolf were the major factions in this title. You could choose between them as far as their storyline was concerned, and you could also play an in-between mission where you could just choose whatever faction, load up your mech and 2 wingmen, and then just face wave after wave of incoming mechs on various planets. So the storyline itself was fairly basic. The missions were fairly general. Go in, destroy a refinery or factory or weapons, and then along the way, kill some various other mechs, or perhaps fight a boss type mech who was like usually in a larger mech, and he was a little bit tougher or whatnot. AI, by today's standards, very basic and nothing to write home about. But back then, it was just, pretty jaw-dropping and amazing, and fairly challenging with the controls that you had available to you. If you think about it, at that time, there really wasn't a whole lot to compete with this title. You had, simulators were bigger back then, but you really didn't have anything that focused on mech combat, and this one was the one to beat. This was the premier mech simulated game. The game was well received by reviewers and critics, and I remember my brother and I just spending hours playing this game and just having a lot of fun with it. Now, it did have one expansion. The Ghost Bear Legacy added Clan Ghost Bear. And then after that, they released MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries. And that was a standalone title. So you could buy MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries and just have that title. You didn't need MechWarrior 2 or Ghost Bear. Ghost Bear was an expansion pack. Back in the day when we actually got expansion packs and there was no such thing as DLC, exclusive content, collector's editions. You just bought your game, you got an expansion a couple months or a year down the line, and then later on you waited for a sequel or something. But in this case, we did get MechWarrior 2 Mercs. Now, the notable thing about MechWarrior 2 Mercs is it added MercNet, which was actually its real kind of online multiplayer lobbying system, so you could play online. The MechWarrior 2 box, like I said, it came with some sort of multiplayer demo, but you needed to buy separately what they called MechNet, and that allowed you to kind of, I guess, have some sort of lobbying system to play against other people. But also, of course, remember, this is back in the age of analog modems. 9600 baud was the basic, and then you had 28.8, 33.6, and then 56K, which didn't necessarily matter because your phone line really couldn't support half of those speeds anyway. So it was tough trying to play online, especially considering you had to master the art of lag shooting. A quick example of lag shooting is basically pretend there's a target at your 12 o'clock position. He's moving right, so what you need to do is aim in front of him, not to lead him, but to shoot at where he actually is. Because even though you see something at your 12 o'clock, he's actually at your 1 o'clock or your 11 o'clock, wherever he's going. And depending on how bad the lag is, you have to kind of guess where his actual mech is. So sometimes you think you're fine, and all of a sudden you just instantaneously blow up because your connection wasn't receiving the fact, or it wasn't registering the fact that you were taking hits. And then you wonder why you just got one-shotted. Well, it's because you were getting hit the whole time, and your machine wasn't registering it. So that's how difficult multiplayer was back in the day, and it really didn't hit great strides until Quake comes out in 1996, and then even further, we had to wait till Quake World showed up with client-side prediction and dedicated servers and things like that. So the MechWarrior days, you had to be more than a MechWarrior pilot. You had to be some sort of experienced gamer of the time, and just really figure out where things are at and throw a little math behind it, I guess, to kind of calculate where everything's going. So it wasn't simple, but we did it because we loved the game, and we did whatever it took, to play this game and to run it. I mean, think back. I played the demo back in the America Online days, where I had to download this demo for hours upon hours to actually get it. So you can think of the time frame where we're actually enjoying these types of titles. And, honestly, there was nothing better. It was a game, you bought it, you got what you paid for. There really wasn't, all the drama that there is with games today, with patches and developers and forums and things like that. There was none. We didn't have forums, we didn't have support, we didn't have patches. If you had a patch, maybe there was one patch and that was it. And even before then, with some games, the developer had to paper snail mail you a CD with a patch on it. Like, I remember actually that happening with a game of mine, you know, even before this. But, you know, I don't even remember patching this game. We just enjoyed it for what it was, and we didn't complain about it. Nowadays, that's not necessarily the case, because you know why? Gamers are spoiled, and publishers are taking advantage of the fact that we demand so much, and now we're in the situation that we are in today. But anyway, as you can see, I think that pretty much sums it up as far as the gameplay and whatnot. Again, I really feel the value was there with this title, and also included with that, like I said, it's on CD. The soundtrack, which you're actually listening to in the background, was brilliant. Really good, great synthesized score. And you know what? You got it for free, because when you have the CD, you could put it in a CD player and it'll play the soundtrack. And Quake 1 did this as well with Trent Reznor's score for Quake. And a lot of the other games continued to do that for a few years until publishers said, you know what? Why should they get the soundtrack for free? Let's charge them for it. Well, there you go. But again, this was like another good soundtrack of the mid-90s for gaming, and just brings back a lot of memories listening to it, and just like kind of looking at this footage at the same time as well. So again, I guess if anything, this has not just been about MechWarrior 2, it's been about the value of games that we used to get, you know. None of this exclusivity crap, you know, and it was just, you know, you threw down your money. Now it just feels like we're paying extra. We're paying $60 for a standard edition that comes with nothing, let alone just a digital edition. Nope, here's your game. No manual, no box, no reference card, no soundtrack, nothing. You want your extra stuff? Give us $80 for a digital deluxe edition. You want even more stuff? $150 for a collector's edition. Oh, but you want even more, right? So, DLC. Well, which DLC do you want? Well, you got to go to GameStop if you want this DLC. You got to go to Best Buy if you want this one, and you got to order from Amazon if you want this one. It's frustrating. And again, when I look back at all these games, especially this one, you can see how our industry has changed, and how the publishers are really trying to just take royal advantage of us. And you know what? I think, guys, that's why we have to look at independent developers and start looking at a lot of these free-to-play titles. And I mentioned free-to-play because this summer, ladies and gentlemen, MechWarrior Online, heck yeah, is coming out. And hopefully it's going to be similar to World of Tanks. It is a free-to-play title, and honestly, those guys deserve your support, because we're finally, it's been, what, over a decade since we've had a sequel, a new MechWarrior game, and these guys appear to be doing it right. They're getting really in-depth. You know, the community's there. People are, you know, hungry for this game, and it's looking phenomenal according to the first trailer we saw. And I am super excited for this title, and I think that's where we have to leave it. You know, just that's what we have to look forward to in the future. And that game has actually been the one thing that inspired me to create this nostalgia night and look back at this classic that is, of course, MechWarrior 2. So if you're interested in playing this game on your own, well, it's going to be kind of difficult. One, you'd have to find a copy, and two, you're going to have to get something called MechVM, which will allow you to run this in Windows 7, which is a chore in itself. And then after that, you'll have to deal with various graphical glitches and bugs to get it to run properly. So I wouldn't actually worry too much about that. If you have Crisis Wars, you can play a mod called MechWarrior Living Legends, which is a free mod for the Crisis Wars game that you can get on Steam. And those modders have done a pretty good job with that. But otherwise, just wait out to the summer and play some MechWarrior Online, and because that's pretty much what I'm focused on right now. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I really hope you've enjoyed this look back at another true classic. Hopefully, I'll have a few more nostalgia nights covering even greater games in the near future. So with that, thank you so much for joining me, and stay tuned for a whole lot more. Very much appreciate you guys. Take care.